One of the most compelling and overlooked ideas in Dragon Ball GT is the recontextualization of Shenron himself, the eternal comforting force of reassurance that the entire cast had grown accustomed to. For decades in the Dragon Ball world, Shenron symbolized security. No matter how terrible a situation became, no matter how dire the consequences, everyone knew that death, suffering, and catastrophe were never absolute. Shenron made the harshness of reality feel softer, almost inconsequential. And over time, the Dragon Balls turned the universe into a kind of paradise where mortality lost its meaning. Yet it's exactly this comfort that becomes their eventual downfall. The idea that this safety net, this divine miracle that shaped the series from its earliest arc, could mutate into its opposite is one of the most brilliant villain concepts the franchise has ever attempted. It flips the core foundation of Dragon Ball on its head. You want a continuation that genuinely challenges everything before it? This is it. The Dragon Balls become a curse born from the weight of overuse, which is peak meta storytelling. It's practically the pinnacle of what you could conceive of if you wanted to evolve Dragon Ball thematically. And despite GT's flaws, the Shadow Dragon arc executes many of the ideas shockingly well. Each Shadow Dragon represents a twisted reflection of a wish, a corrupted karma bomb of the cast's reliance on easy solution. Hey Shenron, the 2-star dragon, is the first major indicator of where this arc is headed. Not only is he deceptively dangerous, but his entire battle with Goku foreshadows the overarching theme. Those who persevere, those who don't rely on shortcuts, are the ones who stand victorious. The message is simple, but deeply tied into the core of Dragon Ball's philosophy. Strength comes from growth and not external salvation. Even the more comedic or seemingly harmless dragons like Ocean and Shenron embody this twisted mirroring. Some of the dragons inadvertently help people to such an excessive degree that they ruin lives. Entire towns become lazy, useless, selfish, and destructive simply because they no longer suffer consequence. It's a pseudo Dragon Ball effect. The same problem, just written small. When your world is shaped by shortcuts, suffering doesn't disappear, it mutates. Rage Shenron, the 5th-star dragon, offers one of the arc's most clever meta-narratives. His wish was tied into Goku's resurrection against Vegeta and Nappa, and so his downfall reflects Goku's own mistake. Rage overrides the brute force and self-confidence, exactly like Goku did against Vegeta, and he's ultimately destroyed because he never learned the lesson that Goku learned. It's a poetic punishment and one Dragon Ball fans rarely give credit to. Nuance continues through Nova Shenron, the 4th-star dragon, whose philosophy centers around the purity of one's heart. He tells Goku that victory depended on the level of one's spirit, something Goku struggled with during their battle because he refuses to harm Pan. This moment is more than a simple moral dilemma. It reinforces that the dragon's corruption directly opposes Goku's deepest values, and ironically, Nova's principles end up foreshadowing the final confrontation. Nova himself is one of the standout dragons. Thematically, he's essentially a yokai-inspired fire spirit, much like the other dragons, but he represents something special. As the embodiment of the 4-star ball, Goku's childhood heirloom from Grandpa Gohan, Nova carries residual traces of Goku's pure energy. This is why he stands out from the others. Goku's influence literally stunted his corruption. He is the abnormality among the Shadow Dragons. He chooses honor, he chooses restraint, and he even spares Pan, directly placing himself apart from his corrupted brethren. Remember that Nova is categorized as good because he spared Pan. This detail becomes very important later. Then comes Sin Shenron. Sin's introduction is arguably one of the coldest villain arrivals in the entire franchise. His first act is murdering Nova with zero hesitation, instantly establishing himself as the atheist to everything Nova represents. Where Nova had honor, Sin has none. Where Nova chose restraint, Sin chooses indulgence. Sin immediately confronts Goku with the brutal truth. You made me. And he tells Goku outright that the misery now involving this planet is the consequence of his repeated wishes, his reliance on the Dragon Balls, and his pursuit of happiness without considering the burden he was placing on nature itself. It's a rare moment where Goku is not just fighting an enemy, he's facing the consequences of his entire life story. And to make that point even more devastating, Sin completely overwhelms Goku, effortlessly and brutally. He even uses the ×10 Kamehameha, a perversion of Goku's own technique, just to show how irrelevant Goku's usual tactics have become. This is what makes Sin Shenron genuinely one of the best villains in Dragon Ball. He isn't just a threat, he is the narrative coming of the full circle. He is the cost of every resurrection, every reset button, and every shortcut the heroes ever relied on. He is the Dragon Balls turned against their own creators. And the fact that this arc ties this lore, thematic weight, and character-driven storytelling into the nature of each individual Shadow Dragon before presenting Sin as the culmination of all that corruption makes him one of the most layered antagonists the franchise has ever produced. The Shadow Dragon arc, for all of its rough edges, contains some of the richest conceptual storytelling Dragon Ball has ever attempted. And Sin stands at the center of it, not just as a monster, but as a thematic embodiment of the series' greatest flaw and its greatest lesson. Among all the villains introduced in Dragon Ball GT, few are as misunderstood and even further subtly written as Sin Shenron, the final ultimate Shadow Dragon, the corrupted embodiment of the 1-star ball. At first glance, Sin, brutally arrogant and overwhelmingly powerful, seems straightforward. He is the logical endpoint of the decades of reckless wish, a creature fueled by negative energy and resentment. But when we pay closer attention, especially to his actions rather than just his words, we begin to notice a different emerging pattern. A pattern that reveals that Sin Shenron and later Omega Shenron operates according to a strange internal logic that is far more complex than simple malicious destruction. This pattern begins to reveal itself in the very first questionable decision that Shin makes by overpowering Super Saiyan 4 Goku. Instead of finishing him off in a clean and direct manner, Shin attempts to drop Goku from the sky into a sword embedded in the ground below. This moment always struck viewers as bizarre. Why would the strongest, most sadistic villain in GT, a being of pure strength and malice, fully aware of Goku's status as the biggest threat to the universe, choose such an indirect, unreliable method of execution? And even stranger, Sin Shenron can sense ki. Not only can he sense it, but he's explicitly shown reacting to energy signatures, gauging strength, and analyzing opponents. This means he should have known full well that other characters were close enough, alert enough, and powerful enough to intervene before Goku hit the blade. Yet he still chose that method. This is the first crack in the facade and the first clue that Shin's motivations and internal conflicts are much deeper than the surface depiction of a demonic dragon made of pure negativity. As the arc progresses, this explicit contradiction becomes even sharper. Nova Shenron's return and the line that changes everything. One of the most significant moments in the entire Shadow Dragon arc arrives when Nova reappears after apparently being killed by Sin. At first, it seems that Nova has returned as an ally of Sin, standing beside him to defeat Goku and Vegeta. Nova attacks base Goku and even fights Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, and all the while, Sin stands back, observing quietly. Then he says the line that changes the entire interpretation of the arc. Nova could have killed Goku in a single blow, yet he didn't. That line is pretty nuclear. The strongest villain in the series at the time, someone who has repeatedly demonstrated that he is willing to obliterate entire city blocks without a second thought, casually acknowledges that Nova had both the power and the opportunity to one-shot Goku. And instead of reacting with outrage or suspicion, Sen observes this fact almost as a sense of understanding. He recognizes Nova's choice, accepts it, and continues watching. And this raises an inescapable point. If Nova could have one-shot Goku in base form, then Omega Shenron absolutely could have done the same thing to every single character present. Yet, he never does. The series gives us ample evidence of this strange behavior. Sin and Omega blast, beat, and impale the cast repeatedly. Their attacks are savage, and yet they consistently do not kill the characters who should logically be dead. Bulma gets death beamed inside her tank and survives without minor scratches. He kicks Super Saiyan Goku and Vegeta through buildings. He directly strikes Mr. Satan, a regular human, without killing him. He also slams Pan into the rubble repeatedly without delivering a fatal blow. Even Ice Shenron, infamously cruel and sadistic, does not kill Pan when he has the perfect opportunity. Viewers often brush this off as PG restrictions or plot armor, but GT doesn't shy away from brutal deaths. Entire cities are erased in the early Shadow Dragon arc, civilians die constantly. Vegeta is violently impaled on screen in one of the most graphic scenes in the franchise. We've seen the Mechians turn to stone, bystanders obliterated by Omega Shenron's energy field, and monsters exploded. GT is not squeamish about killing characters, so the pattern cannot be chalked up to censorship. The truth is simpler and much more profound. Omega Shenron holds back on purpose. He chooses not to kill. Every time characters should logically be dead, Omega instead watches, waits, or even seems amused. This becomes consistent with Sin's earlier attitude as he is proud, confident, and overwhelmingly strong, but not purely nihilistic in the way of being a negative energy should be. There is something almost self-defeating in his behavior, almost as if it's part of him that wants to be challenged. This mirrors Piccolo back when he was evil half of Kami. Even pure evil manifestations in Dragon Ball are not all hollow. They have layers, remnants of identity, and subconscious desires. So what does Omega want? When we examine Omega's dialogue, especially towards the final episodes, a new sight emerges. Omega does not simply want to kill everyone, he wants to defeat the idea of Goku. He repeatedly tells Goku, you could just stop trying, just give up and you'll go to heaven peacefully. There's no point in resisting. This is a villain who is not merely fighting to destroy the universe, he is fighting to invalidate everything Goku stands for. Perseverance, growth, hope, and the power of positive energy. Omega wants Goku to accept failure, not just experience it. Kill Goku quickly and the philosophy dies a martyr. Break his spirit and the philosophy dies a hypocrite. This is why Omega allows Goku to be repeatedly empowered by others. That is why he gives Vegeta time to rise back up. And that's also why he doesn't kill the supporting cast when he has the clear ability to. He wants Goku to win on his terms, in a way that proves Goku's worldview was misguided from the moment the Dragon Balls were created. The narrator even states explicitly Omega Shenron desires the annihilation of all life in the universe, but only if he is not proven wrong. It's not that he doesn't want destruction, it's that he wants destruction to come after the philosophical victory. Ultimately, what we see in Shin and Omega is that they are not simply monsters made of negativity. Their actions reveal a deeper internal conflict and a remnant of something else, just as Piccolo Daimao carried remnants of Kami and eventually enveloped beyond simple evil. They are, in a twisted way, still the creation of the Dragon Balls, still tied to Earth and still tied to Goku's legacy. One of the most overlooked and misunderstanding story beats in the entire Dragon Ball arc happens right after Gogeta defuses and Omega Shenron regains control of the battle. And the beat begins with something incredibly small and something almost no one pays attention to, but it reveals a mountain of thematic meaning. Goku is genuinely confused when Omega Shenron asks him, "Do you even understand why I'm here?" Most fans treat this line as a simple villain banter, but it's not. It actually startles Goku, and he's not annoyed. He's not dismissive, he's just confused and almost disturbed. Why? Because this is one of the rare times in the franchise where the villain is not asking about strength, pride, or asking about the Saiyan limit, but seeing if Goku understands the reason behind the crisis itself. And for once in the series, Goku doesn't know. He even tells Omega Shenron multiple times, "I don't get what you mean and you're not making any sense." This is the setup to one of the most important payoffs in all of GT storytelling, the ending that the fans talk about till this day. During the battle with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Omega Shenron is pushed harder than ever before. He's humiliated, tossed around, mocked, blasted, and toyed with. But the moment Gogeta starts joking around and letting the fight drag on, instead of ending it instantly, the tone shifts. This is where Goku's oldest flaw returns, learning the hard way that fun and mercy can carry consequences he never intended. As Gogeta wastes time, the fusion wears off before they deliver the final blow. Omega remains in control and immediately launches another minus energy ball, this time aimed directly at Earth. And even here, Omega gives another strange insight into his character. He warns them that even at this reduced size, the sphere could still destroy the Earth. This implies he is deliberately suppressing its full power. A larger sphere could destroy far more than a single planet, and yet he consciously chose not to escalate it to its maximum. This returns us to the same philosophical conflict established earlier. Omega never wants simple destruction, he wants destruction on his terms, after he's proven his point. This also ties into the earlier foreshadowing that Goku doesn't understand why he's here. Omega is waiting for Goku to realize something, not just simply overpower him. Another overlooked element is how unusually perceptive Omega Shenron is. He's not brute, and he's not a simple berserker or mindless demon. In fact, Omega Shenron is the first character in the entire series to deduce instantly why Goku and Vegeta can no longer fuse. It takes Trunks time to figure it out, and it takes the audience time to figure it out as well, but Omega sees through it immediately. And this is because he inherits the ancient knowledge of Shenron, the spiritual awareness of the Dragon Balls, and the accumulated negative energy and generation of wishes. Omega Shenron may know Goku and Vegeta's limits better than they know themselves. This is why he warns Goku not to self-destruct, even though Vegeta believes it wouldn't work. Omega has assessed the viability of every method of killing him. He has considered every threat and analyzed every tactic, and he rejects them. Not out of fear, but out of the same philosophical reason he rejects killing Goku instantly. He doesn't want quick, pointless death. He wants Goku to understand the truth. When Goku goes base form and is forced to hold back the minus energy ball, the scene becomes a deliberate parallel to his final battle with Kid Buu. In Z, Goku needed the Dragon Balls, the universe's energy, and the help of friends and rivals to ultimately overpower Buu. But now, in GT, that help is gone. The Dragon Balls themselves are the problem. Goku has no external support and nothing divine to lean on. He must awaken something internal. This is the inversion of Z's message, and it's the thematic final exam of all Dragon Ball. Omega even powers up the spear casually, easily overpowering Goku's new burst of willpower and seemingly killing him. But once again, the villain spares everyone else. He continues to not kill Pan, Mr. Satan, and the remaining Saiyans despite having every opportunity. Omega Shenron is waiting, testing, and pushing Goku towards a realization. And that brings us to the true climax of Dragon Ball GT, the final confrontation, the Universal Spirit Bomb. The true GT ending begins not with the Spirit Bomb, but with the realization that Goku has changed. When Goku returns with the Universal Spirit Bomb forming above him, Omega blasts him, a direct hit, yet Goku takes almost no damage. This is bizarre considering Omega's blast earlier nearly killed him, and there are two possibilities for this. Omega underestimated the new Goku, failing to recognize that Goku's state had transformed. Goku is no longer operating at normal rules, having already begun the ascension process that the ending hints at. Either way, something is fundamentally different. Omega launches more blasts and they do nothing. Goku continues gathering Genki from across the entire universe, forming the largest spirit bomb in history. And the moment he hurls it, Omega Shenron, the embodiment of every mistake humanity made by the Dragon Balls, is vaporized. Positive energy overwrites negative energy. order overrides chaos and creation overrides corruption. The cycle finally ends, and the biggest mystery of Dragon Ball GT begins. The real Shenron appears, uncalled, unsummoned, and different. The sky doesn't turn black, and no wish was made. No chant was spoken either. Shenron simply appears of his own will, a divine intervention. He heals Goku, then asks him the same question Omega Shenron asked earlier. Do you understand why the Shadow Dragons appeared? And this time Goku answers yes. This confirms everything Omega Shenron was pushing towards. Goku had to understand the consequence, not just the defeat of the threat. Then Shenron simply says, let's go, and Goku says, I guess it's that time. He knew. He suddenly knew exactly what Shenron meant, and he flies off. He fuses with the Dragon Balls and says goodbye without sadness, fear, or hesitation. And the strangest element of all is his clothes got left behind when he vanishes from sight. This is symbolic, it's mythic, and it's religious. It echoes one of the oldest spiritual motives in Eastern and Western storytelling, ascension in broad daylight. It's not just a fan theory, this is a well-established mythological archetype. A person dies, but their true self is reborn beyond the physical world. The earthly form is shed and they transcend human existence. They become a spiritual guardian or divine figure. In Eastern religion, this is seen as a form of enlightenment or deification. In Dragon Ball, it represents Goku becoming something beyond mortal and beyond Saiyan. He becomes the guardian of the Dragon Balls, the living connection between Earth and the divine eternal protector, the bridge between positive energy and humanity. This is why Shenron takes him, and this is why Goku goes willingly. GT doesn't end with death, it ends with transcendence. Omega Shenron wanted Goku to understand the consequences of relying on miracles without appreciating their weight. Shenron wanted Goku to accept the responsibility that humans never did, and for Goku, for the first time in his life, understood the reason for his presence in the universe. GT's ending is not about losing Goku, it's about Goku finally becoming what he always meant to be. In many ways, Goku's final transformation in Dragon Ball GT echoes a spiritual pattern far older than the franchise itself. Throughout mythology and even biblical tradition, there are stories in which a person must abandon their physical form to their truest, purest self to emerge. Even Jesus, depending on the interpretation, undergoes a cycle of death, transcendence, and rebirth that elevates him beyond the limits of ordinary flesh. GT leans into a similar archetype, the belief that true ascension requires letting go of the mortal body so the spirit can rise and be unbound. For this process to occur, the individual must be virtuous, pure-hearted, and entirely selfless, qualities Goku has always embodied. So when Goku emerges from the massive crater after enduring Omega Shenron's final assault, the moment carries symbolic weight. His body isn't bruised, battered, or exhausted. He stands firmly, growing softly as if something within him has awakened. Omega Shenron immediately senses this and asks, "Who are you?" This question is notable because it's typically reserved for the fusions, beings who are technically new people. Yet here, Goku radiates that same unfamiliarity. It's as if shedding the limits of his mortal shell allowed a deeper, more transcendent version of himself to appear in something between a man, a warrior, and a divine force. This interpretation becomes even more compelling when viewed through the cultural lens that GT draws from. Shenron himself and the Shadow Dragons are deeply inspired by Shinto beliefs, where dragons are not simply monsters, but supernatural beings from another plane whose purpose is to mediate between heaven and earth. Traditional Japanese mythology includes rituals in which the Dragon Balls act as guides and souls toward a righteous path upward, carrying from them the mortal world into a higher realm. These dragons are radiant beings of light and symbolize the bridge between spiritual essence and spiritual liberation. If Shenron represents such a figure, then his connection to Goku at the end of GT becomes much more clear. Goku doesn't merely ride off with Shenron for aesthetic drama, he ascends with him. And when that happens, Goku's entire presence subtly changes. His body fades in and out and his clothing shifts. Even his energy feels serene rather than explosive. He isn't exactly alive in the standard sense, but he isn't dead either. He exists in a heightened state, neither bound by time nor aging. This explains why he appears centuries later, still youthful, still whole, and still unmistakably Goku. He may very well have ascended with Shenron entering a plane where mortals no longer degrade with time. For a Western viewer, this imagery might seem confusing, but within Japanese storytelling, ascension through a spiritual companion, especially a dragon, is an extremely familiar motive. GT embraces this cultural symbolism unapologetically. And within that framework, Goku's departure is not meant to be tragic, it's meant to be liberating. However, there is also more literal interpretation noted in Dragon Ball's internal logic. It's possible that Goku's transcendence wasn't purely spiritual, but partially mythical and partially power-based. After all, at the end of the series, he had just wielded the Universal Spirit Bomb, an attack containing the energy of countless stars, planets, and life forms. Not only that, but the Universal Spirit Bomb is designed to counter evil energy, and Omega Shenron's body contains an immense concentration of Shadow Dragon negativity. Many fans theorize that the Spirit Bomb didn't just destroy Omega, it cleansed or purified Goku, fusing him with that same divine cosmic energy. Considering Goku had fused with benevolent beings before, such as Nova Shenron, it's not unreasonable to think that something similar could have occurred here. Perhaps the Spirit Bomb catalyzed a transformation beyond mortal comprehension, emerging Goku and Shenron himself, a Super Shenron Goku in a symbolic sense. Both interpretations, mythic ascension or metaphysical fusion, converge on the same thematic destination. GT's entire story is ultimately about freedom and self-discovery. From traveling across the universe to rediscovering empathy, humility, and simplicity, to relearning what it means to protect others without relying on the Dragon Ball. Goku's journey in GT is inward rather than outward, and in the end, when Shenron calls upon him, Goku finally achieves a level of freedom no Saiyan has ever known. For the first time in his life, he's free from battle, free from responsibility, and free from expectation. Everyone can now live their own lives, in the entire Earth without leaning on Goku or the Dragon Balls as a safety net. And Goku, after giving everything he has for decades, is finally able to rest peacefully, eternally, and alongside that very entity that has shaped his destiny since childhood. He rises into the heavens not as a runaway hero, but as a completed soul who's found his true self. In the end, Goku's final moments in GT is not about loss at all. It's about transcendence, harmony, and the liberation of a spirit that has always reached towards something greater. It's the perfect conclusion to the pure-hearted boy who once rode a different dragon through the sky, and who now at last has become something more than even a Saiyan could dream of.